The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of the Imperial Academy on Valthera Prime. Hana moved through her combat forms with deadly precision, her blade cutting through the air in perfect arcs. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her muscular frame covered in the traditional armor of a Valthan warrior princess. Sweat dripped from her brow as she completed another sequence, her breathing steady and controlled. Around her, other warriors practiced their own techniques. The sound of clashing weapons and shouted commands filled the air. This was the heart of the Valthan Empire, where the greatest fighters in the galaxy trained to become even greater. Hana had grown up on these grounds, learning from the best teachers her mother could provide. She took pride in her skill, in her strength, in her heritage. "Princess Hana," called a voice from the entrance. It was Jiho, one of her closest companions in the elite guard. He jogged toward her, his own armor gleaming in the sunlight. "The human delegation has arrived. Your mother wants you to attend the welcoming ceremony." Hana made a face. "Humans, they only joined the Galactic Council 2 years ago. Why does mother waste time with them?" Jiho shrugged. "Politics, I suppose. The Empress meets with everyone." Hana wiped her blade clean and sheathed it. "Fine. Let me change into something more formal. I will not embarrass my mother, even for humans." An hour later, Hana stood in the grand reception hall of the Imperial Palace. The room was massive, with pillars that stretched 50 feet high and windows that overlooked the capital city. Empress Mirai sat on her throne, regal and imposing. She wore the deep purple robes of her office, and her crown glinted with precious metals from a dozen worlds. The human delegation entered through the main doors. There were 5 of them, all looking tiny compared to the Valthan guards that lined the walls. They wore simple dark blue uniforms with minimal decoration. Hana studied them with barely concealed disinterest. They looked so fragile, so weak. She had heard that humans came from a heavy-gravity world, but these specimens did not seem impressive at all. The lead diplomat, an older woman with gray hair, bowed respectfully. "Your Imperial Majesty, thank you for receiving us. I am Ambassador Park, representing the United Earth Government." Empress Mirai nodded graciously. "Welcome to Valthera Prime, Ambassador. We are pleased to strengthen ties with Earth." The ceremony continued with formal speeches and exchanges of gifts. Hana stood to her mother's right, trying not to look bored. Her eyes wandered over the human delegation, dismissing each in turn. Then her gaze landed on one who stood slightly behind the others. He was a man, perhaps in his 40s, with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore the same uniform as the others, but with a small patch that indicated military service. He stood quietly, his hands clasped behind his back, watching everything with a stillness that Hana found irritating. After the formal ceremony ended, the humans were given a tour of the palace and academy grounds. Hana excused herself and returned to the training hall. She had wasted enough time on diplomatic nonsense. She wanted to work on a new technique her instructor had shown her. She was in the middle of a complex drill when she noticed someone watching from the doorway. It was the quiet human soldier from the delegation. He stood there, simply observing, his expression neutral. Hana stopped her practice and turned to face him. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone cold. The human stepped forward slightly and gave a small bow. "I apologize for interrupting. I am Doyun, security escort for the diplomatic mission. I was told I could observe the training facilities. I did not mean to disturb you." His voice was quiet and respectful. Hana felt her irritation grow. There was something about his calm demeanor that annoyed her. "You are not disturbing me," she said, "but I wonder why you are here. Do humans not train their soldiers?" Doyun's expression did not change. "We do, Princess. I was simply curious about Valthan combat techniques. They are renowned throughout the galaxy." "Renowned for good reason," Hana said. She gestured to the training area. "We Valthans have perfected warfare over 10,000 years. Our warriors are the finest in known space." "I do not doubt it," Doyun replied simply. Something in his tone made Hana's pride flare. He was not arguing, but he also did not seem impressed. She made a decision. "Would you like to see Valthan combat firsthand?" she asked, a smile playing at her lips. "Perhaps a demonstration? Or even a friendly match?" Doyun was quiet for a moment. "That is very kind, Princess, but I am here as a diplomat's guard, not as a warrior." "I should probably just observe," Hana laughed, a sound that echoed in the large hall. "By now, Several other warriors had stopped their own training to watch. Jiho Kyung and Taehyun, her regular training partners, moved closer to see what was happening. "You decline because you are afraid," Hana said, her voice carrying to the other warriors. "You know that a human could never match a Valthan in combat." Doyen shook his head slightly. "I decline because I am a guest here, Princess. It would be inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Hana's smile grew wider. "Or impossible. I have heard that Earth begged to be admitted to the Galactic Council, that the other races took pity on your weak species. Is this true?" A few of the watching warriors chuckled. Hana was playing to her audience now, enjoying herself. The human still stood there calmly, and that calm was like fuel to her fire. "We asked to join, yes," Doyen said quietly. "Whether it was pity or merit, I cannot say. I am just a soldier." "Just a soldier," Hana repeated. "Yes, I can see that. A soldier from a race that has barely left its own star system. A soldier from a world that knows nothing of true warfare." Kyung laughed openly now. "Perhaps the human fights with words instead of weapons, Princess. They seem to prefer talking." Doyen looked at each of them in turn. His face remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. It was not anger exactly, more like a deep weariness. "I have fought when I needed to," he said softly, "but I do not fight to prove anything. Not anymore." "How noble," Hana said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The human soldier who does not fight. Perhaps you should have been a diplomat instead of a guard." Doyen gave another small bow. "Perhaps you are right, Princess. If you will excuse me, I should return to my duties." He turned and walked toward the door. His movements were smooth and economical, but Hana saw only retreat. She called after him. "Run along, little human. Tell your ambassador that Valthan warriors are not impressed by Earth's charity cases." The other warriors laughed as Doyen left the training hall. Hana felt victorious, superior. She had put the human in his place without even needing to fight him. She returned to her practice, already forgetting about the encounter. That evening, Hana joined her mother for dinner in the private chambers. It was just the two of them, as it often was. Empress Mirai asked about her day, and Hana mentioned the human delegation. "There was a human soldier watching the training today," Hana said as she ate. "He challenged me, but when I accepted, he ran away." Typical human cowardice. Mirai looked up from her plate. "A soldier? What did he look like?" Hana shrugged. "Average height for a human. Dark hair, maybe 40 years old, quiet. His name was Doyen." The fork slipped from Mirai's hand and clattered on her plate. The Empress's eyes went wide, her face suddenly pale. Hana had never seen her mother look shocked before. "Mother, what is wrong?" Mirai stood up quickly. "Show me the security footage from the training hall. Now." Confused and concerned, Hana pulled up the recordings on her personal device. She showed her mother the scene with Doyen. Mirai watched in silence, her hand covering her mouth. When the recording ended, Mirai sat down heavily in her chair. She looked at her daughter with an expression Hana could not read. It was something between awe and regret. "That man," Mirai said softly. "I never thought I would see him again." "Who is he?" Hana asked, her earlier confidence evaporating. Mirai took a deep breath. "Sit down, daughter. I need to tell you a story. A story about the day your mother should have died, and the human who made sure she lived." Hana sat frozen in her chair, staring at her mother. Empress Mirai looked different than she had moments before. The shock had faded from her face, replaced by something deeper. Something that looked like old pain mixed with profound respect. 15 years ago, Mirai began, her voice steady but soft. "I was not yet Empress. I was Commander Mirai, leader of the Third Fleet. Your father had just died in a border skirmish, and I was trying to prove myself worthy of my position. I was young and full of pride, much like you are now." Hana wanted to protest that comparison, but stayed silent. Her mother rarely spoke of the past. "Then the Wraiths came," Mirai continued, and Hana felt a chill run down her spine. Every child in the galaxy knew about the Wraiths. They were nightmare creatures, a machine consciousness that consumed entire civilizations. They had appeared suddenly, devastating everything in their path, then vanished just as mysteriously. But that was ancient history, or so Hana had thought. "The history books say the Wraith War lasted 6 months, Mirai said. "They do not tell you how close we came to losing everything. 7 sectors fell in the first 3 weeks. Billions died. The machines were like nothing we had ever fought. They learned from every battle, adapted to every tactic. They did not negotiate, did not retreat, did not stop." Mirai stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. The Galactic Council assembled every available fleet and sent them to the Quran passage. It was a natural choke point, the only way the Wraiths could reach the core worlds. We were ordered to hold the line at any cost. I had 60 ships under my command, she continued. We faced a Wraith armada of 600. The Council said reinforcements would come in 3 days. We just had to hold for 3 days. Hana had never heard this story. She leaned forward, completely focused on her mother's words. We held for 1 day, Mirai said quietly. Then the Wraiths changed tactics. They sent boarding pods directly at our larger ships. Thousands of machine soldiers, each one a perfect killing machine. They tore through our vessels like paper. My flagship, the Eternal Victory, was breached in 17 places. Mirai turned back to face her daughter. I lost 40 ships in the first 30 hours. The survivors were crippled, running out of ammunition and power. I sent a final message to the Council, telling them we had failed, that the Wraiths would reach the core worlds in 2 days. I told them to evacuate what they could. Then a human ship arrived, Mirai said, and her voice changed. It became warmer somehow, despite the grim story. It was a small frigate called the Resilience. It was ancient by human standards, barely holding together. The captain contacted me directly. His name was Sang-hoon. He told me that Earth had received my distress call. I remember laughing bitterly. I asked him how many ships Earth was sending. He said just his ship. 1 frigate with 200 human marines. That was all Earth could spare. Hana could not help herself. 200 soldiers against 600 Wraith ships? Mirai smiled sadly. That is exactly what I said. I told Captain Sang-hoon to retreat, that there was no point in humans dying too. Do you know what he said? Hana shook her head. He said, With respect, Commander, humans do not run from a fight when allies need help. We may not have your ships or your weapons, but we have one thing the Wraiths do not. We are too stupid to know when we are beaten. Despite the serious moment, Hana almost smiled at that. Captain Sang-hoon had a plan, Mirai continued. The Wraiths were machines, he said. They fought with machine logic. They calculated odds and chose the most efficient path to victory. But humans, he said, did not fight that way. Humans fought dirty. They fought mean. They fought in ways that made no logical sense. Mirai began pacing now, as if reliving the battle in her mind. He proposed a joint operation. My fleet would continue engaging the Wraith ships in space, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, the human marines would board the Wraith motherships directly and sabotage them from inside. I thought it was suicide, Mirai admitted. Boarding a Wraith vessel was considered impossible. Their internal defenses were too strong. But Sang-hoon said humans had experience with impossible missions. He said it was their specialty. I agreed because I had no other choice. What happened next? Mirai paused, searching for words. What happened next was like watching legends come to life. The human frigate flew straight into the Wraith formation. It was too small for them to consider a real threat, so they ignored it. That was their first mistake. The Resilience launched boarding pods at 3 motherships simultaneously. The humans cut through the hulls and entered the vessels. Mirai's eyes were distant now, seeing something Hana could not. They fought through those ships like nothing I had ever seen. The Wraiths adapted to our tactics within minutes, but they could not adapt to the humans. The humans were unpredictable. They used explosives in ways that defied military doctrine. They set traps that made no tactical sense but worked anyway. They turned the Wraiths' own systems against them. While the humans created chaos inside, we pressed our attack from outside. It was working. For the first time, the Wraiths seemed confused. 3 motherships went dark within an hour, then 5 more. The Wraith formation began to falter. But then my flagship took a direct hit to the bridge, Mirai said, her voice dropping. I was blown clear, but I ended up in a sealed section with no way out. And the Wraiths knew I was there. They sent their hunters after me, 20 machine soldiers, each designed specifically to kill biological targets. Hana gripped the armrests of her chair. She had never known her mother had come so close to death. I fought them, Mirai said. I killed 6 before my weapon failed. I had my blade and I killed 3 more. But there were too many. I was wounded, exhausted. I knew I was going to die in that corridor alone. Then the wall exploded, Mirai said. And now her voice carried something like wonder. Through the smoke came a human in damaged armor. It was Do-yun. He was the second in command of the Resilience, Captain Sang-hoon's right hand. He had fought through 3 decks to reach my position. He moved through those Wraith hunters like they were training dummies. His weapon never stopped firing, never missed. When it ran dry, he used their own weapons against them. When those failed, he used his hands. I watched him tear the head off a wraith with his bare hands after his gun jammed. Hana could hardly believe what she was hearing. The quiet man she had mocked doing such things? He cleared the corridor in under 2 minutes, Mirai said. Then he pulled me to my feet and asked if I could walk. I told him yes. He said good because we had to get back to the bridge. The battle was not over yet. He protected me the entire way back. Every wraith that came at us he put down. He was wounded, bleeding from multiple hits, but he never slowed. When we reached the bridge, he sealed the door behind us and told me to contact my fleet. He said the humans had completed their mission. The Wraith Command network was about to collapse. I asked him where Captain Sang-hoon was. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the captain had stayed behind on the central mothership to ensure the core breach. He said Sang-hoon wanted him to tell me, "Humans do not abandon allies, Your Highness." Tears glistened in Mirai's eyes. The Wraith Command network failed 10 minutes later. The entire armada went dormant. We destroyed them easily after that. The threat was over. The core worlds were saved. But the cost, Mirai whispered. Of the 200 humans who came to help us, only 20 survived. Captain Sang-hoon died on that mothership. 180 others died throughout that fleet. The Resilience itself was so damaged it broke apart 2 hours after the battle ended. I tried to honor them, Mirai said. I told the council what the humans had done. I recommended every one of them for the highest military honors the galaxy could give. But Earth refused. They said their soldiers were just doing their duty. They said no special recognition was needed. Doyun was among the survivors, Mirai continued. I spoke with him before he left. I thanked him for saving my life. I told him I owed him a debt that could never be repaid. He just looked at me with those calm eyes and said, "You owe me nothing, Commander. We helped because we could. That is all." Mirai turned to face Hana fully now. "That man you mocked today, that man you called a coward, that man is the reason you exist. Without him, I would have died on that ship 15 years ago. You would never have been born. This empire might have fallen to the wraiths." Hana felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Her earlier pride turned to ash in her mouth. The shame hit her like a physical weight. "Tomorrow," Mirai said firmly, "you will find Doyun. You will apologize, and you will bow before him. Not because I order it, but because he has earned more respect than you can possibly imagine. Do you understand?" Hana could barely speak. "Yes, Mother." That night, Hana lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She kept seeing Doyun's calm face, his quiet dignity when she had insulted him. He had not defended himself. He had not tried to prove anything. He had simply walked away because he had nothing to prove to someone like her. She thought about his words. "I have fought when I needed to. But I do not fight to prove anything. Not anymore." Now those words made terrible sense. What did you have to prove when you had already saved an empire? Hana closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Hana woke before dawn, her mind still heavy with the previous night's revelation. She dressed in simple training clothes and went to her private terminal. If Doyun was truly a hero, there must be records. She needed to know more before facing him again. She searched the military databases for anything about the Battle of Karen Passage. The official records were there, but they were surprisingly brief. The battle was listed as a decisive victory against the Wraith invasion. The Valthan Third Fleet was credited with holding the line. Human participation was mentioned in a single sentence. Minimal Allied support from Earth forces contributed to the operation's success. Minimal? Hana stared at the words in disbelief. 200 Marines, 180 dead, and they called it minimal support? She searched for Doyun specifically. His military record appeared, but it was short and unremarkable. Born on Earth, enlisted at 18, served in various conflicts, promoted to lieutenant current status, active duty security detail. No medals listed, no commendations, no mention of the Karen Passage at all. Confused, Hana expanded her search to Earth's own databases. Surely humans kept better records of their heroes. What she found stunned her even more. The Battle of Karen Passage was mentioned in Earth historical records, but only as a footnote. The Resilience was listed among hundreds of ships lost during humanity's early expansion period. Captain Sang-hoon had a memorial page, but it was simple. Name, rank, date of death, survived by a wife and 2 children. The 180 others were listed in a memorial database with thousands of other casualties. Doyen had no special entry at all. He was just another name in the service roster. How could they not honor him? How could Earth treat such sacrifice so casually? Then she found a quote from Earth's military philosophy archives. "Every soldier who does their duty is a hero. We do not elevate individuals above their comrades. We honor the service, not the person." Hana sat back, trying to understand this mindset. In Valthan culture, great warriors were celebrated for generations. Their names were carved in monuments. Songs were sung about their deeds, but humans apparently saw things differently. To them, Doyen had simply done what any soldier would do. The thought humbled her in ways she did not expect. Over the next 3 days, Hana found herself watching Doyen from a distance. She told herself she was learning about him, preparing for her apology. But truthfully, she was trying to understand him. She saw him visit the memorial gardens where the names of all who died in the Wraith War were inscribed. He stood before the human section for a long time, not moving, just looking at the names. When he finally left, his eyes were wet. She saw him with the other human diplomats, always in the background, always watchful. He never seemed to relax completely. Even when others laughed or ate, he remained alert, like he was always expecting an attack. She saw him walk through the market district one afternoon. He stopped at a vendor selling flowers and bought a small blue bloom. He carried it carefully like it was precious. Later, she learned he had left it at the memorial wall. Just one flower among hundreds of others. But what struck her most was watching him move. Now that she knew what to look for, she could see it. The way he walked was too smooth, too controlled. The way he turned his head covered every angle without seeming to. The way he stood put him in position to react to threats from any direction. This was not just training. This was instinct carved into his body by countless battles. On the 4th day, Hana finally gathered her courage. She found Doyen alone in the memorial gardens at sunset. He stood before a fountain looking at the water. She approached slowly, her heart beating faster than it ever did in combat. "Doyen," she said quietly. He turned, and his expression was neutral as always. "Princess Hana, how can I help you?" The formal politeness in his tone made her shame burn brighter. She had earned no familiarity from him, no warmth. She took a breath and bowed deeply, deeper than she had ever bowed to anyone except her mother. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What I said to you in the training hall was wrong. It was ignorant and insulting. You did not deserve such treatment." She straightened and met his eyes. "My mother told me what you did at Karen Passage, what you sacrificed, what you and your comrades gave to save our people. I had no idea. I am truly sorry." Doyen was quiet for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. "Your apology is accepted, Princess." "No offense was taken." "How can you say that?" Hana asked, frustration creeping into her voice. "I insulted you in front of my warriors. I called you a coward. I mocked everything you had done." "You did not know," Doyen said simply. "You reacted based on the information you had. That is not a crime." "But still—" "Princess," Doyen interrupted gently, "I have been insulted by people who knew exactly what I had done and still chose to disrespect me. Your insult made in ignorance bothers me far less. Please think nothing more of it." His easy forgiveness somehow made Hana feel worse. She struggled to find the right words. "Why did you not tell me?" "When I challenged you, you could have said who you were. You could have made me look foolish." Doyen turned back to the fountain. "Because I am not who you think I am, Princess. I am not a hero. I am just a soldier who survived when better people did not. My captain died on that mothership. My friends died on those ships. I lived because I was lucky, nothing more. That is not what my mother says." "Your mother is kind," Doyen replied. "She sees what she wants to see because it helps her sleep at night. But I know the truth. I was just doing what needed to be done. Anyone else would have done the same." Hana moved to stand beside him, looking at the fountain. "I do not believe that. Not everyone would have fought through 3 decks to save a stranger. Not everyone would have faced 20 Wraith Hunters alone." "I was not alone," Doyen said softly. "I had my team with me. They died clearing those decks. I was just the one who made it to your mother." They stood in silence for a while. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Finally, Hana spoke again. "Will you teach me?" Doyen looked at her, surprised for the first time. "Teach you what?" "How humans fight," Hana said. "Not just the techniques, but the philosophy. The way of thinking. I want to understand what made you able to do what you did. Doyun shook his head. Princess, I am just a security escort. I am not qualified to train anyone, especially not a warrior of your skill. Please, Hana said, and the word came out more desperate than she intended. I need to understand. I have trained my whole life in Valthan combat. I thought I knew what it meant to be a warrior, but after learning what you did, what humans did, I realize I know nothing. Doyun studied her face for a long moment. Hana met his gaze steadily, willing him to see her sincerity. Why? He asked finally. Why does this matter to you so much? Because I was wrong, Hana said simply. Because my pride blinded me to truth. Because I want to be better than I was 4 days ago. And because... She hesitated, then continued. Because you saved my mother's life, which means you gave me mine. I owe you a debt I can never repay. The least I can do is learn from you. Doyun was quiet again. Then he sighed, a sound that carried the weight of years. If I agree, you will not like what I teach. Human warfare is not pretty. It is not honorable by your standards. We fight to win, to survive. We do whatever works. I understand, Hana said, and I can only spare a few days. The delegation leaves in a week. I will take whatever time you can give. Doyun looked at her one more time, then nodded slowly. Very well. Tomorrow morning before dawn. Meet me in Training Hall 7. Bring your friends, the ones who laughed. They should learn too. Hana bowed again. Thank you. As she turned to leave, Doyun spoke once more. Princess? One more thing. She looked back. Your mother once told me that the strongest warriors are not those who never fall, but those who stand back up after falling. You fell, now you are standing. That takes more courage than you know. Hana felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She nodded and left the garden. That night she spoke with Jiho, Kyung, and Taehyun. She told them what she had learned about Doyun. She told them about the training opportunity. To their credit, all three immediately agreed. The shame on their faces matched her own. The next morning, before dawn, 4 Valthan warriors stood in Training Hall 7. They waited in the darkness, each lost in their own thoughts. When Doyun entered, he was dressed in simple exercise clothes. He looked even smaller than usual without his uniform. But when he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. Before we begin, I need you to understand something. Everything you think you know about combat, forget it. At least for the next few days. Can you do that? The 4 warriors nodded. Good, Doyun said. Then let us start with the most important lesson. The one that kept me alive when so many others died. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. We do not fight to win glory. We do not fight to prove strength. We do not fight to show honor. We fight for one reason only, to survive and complete the mission. Everything else is distraction. Everything else will get you killed. He began to pace slowly. Your people value single combat. You value fair fights and honorable duels. That is beautiful, but it is suicide. Humans value victory. If that means shooting an enemy in the back, we do it. If that means using poison, we do it. The first lesson was about pain. Doyun stood in the center of the training hall facing the 4 Valthan warriors. Attack me, he said simply. All of you together. Do not hold back. Hana exchanged glances with Jiho, Kyung, and Taehyun. They were all thinking the same thing. Doyun was one man, a human, smaller and physically weaker than any of them. This seemed wrong. Are you sure? Hana asked. Very sure, Doyun replied. You need to understand what I am teaching. Words alone will not do it. Jiho moved first. He was the fastest of the group and his strike came like lightning. Doyun sidestepped it easily, but Kyung was already coming from the other side. Doyun dropped low, letting Kyung's fist pass over his head. Then Taehyun swept in from behind. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Doyun moved in a way that seemed impossible. He flowed between their attacks like water, never where they expected him to be. Then his hand shot out and struck Jiho in the throat. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but enough to make him choke and stumble. His elbow caught Kyung in the solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. His foot swept Taehyun's legs out from under him. Hana came last, trying to grab him in a hold. Doyun twisted, using her own momentum against her. Suddenly she was on the ground. Doyun's hand at her throat, his knee on her chest. He could have crushed her windpipe. Instead, he released her and stepped back. All 4 warriors lay on the ground, gasping. That is lesson 1, Doyun said calmly. Size does not matter if you know where to strike. Strength does not matter if you use their force against them. Numbers do not matter if you move faster than they can coordinate. He helped Hana to her feet. Valthan warriors train to be strong, to overpower their opponents. Humans train to be efficient, to end fights as quickly as possible. We cannot match your strength, so we target weak points. The throat, the eyes, the joints, the organs. We do not try to win fairly. We try to make sure the other person cannot fight back. Over the next hour, he showed them strike points they had never considered in their traditional training, places where even a weak hit could disable an opponent, ways to use an enemy's size against them, how to turn a disadvantage into an advantage. Remember, Doyen said, in real combat there is no second place. There is alive and there is dead. Everything you do should be aimed at staying alive and making sure your enemy is not. The second lesson was about deception. Your fighting style is too honest, Doyen told them. You telegraph your moves. You take honorable stances. You give your opponent a fair chance to defend. He shook his head. In war, this will get you killed. He had them practice feinting, making attacks they had no intention of completing. He taught them to limp when they were not injured, to hold an arm like it was hurt when it was fine. He showed them how to make an enemy think they were winning right up until the moment they lost. Humans lie in combat, he said bluntly. We pretend to be weaker than we are. We act defeated to draw the enemy in close. We fake retreats to lead them into traps. Your honor is admirable, but honor cannot stop a blade. Kyung struggled with this the most. This seems wrong, he said. A warrior should face their enemy openly. Doyen nodded. Yes, that is what many think. That is why they die. He softened his tone slightly. I understand your reluctance, truly. But ask yourself this. If deception saves your life and the lives of your comrades, is it not more honorable to live and continue protecting others than to die with your pride intact? The question hung in the air. None of them had an answer. The third lesson was about fear. You are taught to be fearless, Doyen said, to face death without flinching. This is a mistake, Hana frowned. Warriors must be brave. Fear makes you weak. No, Doyen said firmly. Fear keeps you alive. Fear makes you careful. Fear makes you think. The soldiers who claimed to be fearless were always the first ones I had to bury. He began to pace. I was terrified during the Battle of Karen Passage. Every moment of it. When I was cutting through those decks to reach your mother, I was sure I would die. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. But I used that fear. I let it sharpen my senses, speed my reactions, fuel my movement. The key, he continued, is not to eliminate fear. That is impossible. The key is to act despite it. Fear tells you there is danger. Courage is doing what needs to be done anyway. He made them practice fighting while afraid. He had them run until they were exhausted, their hearts racing, their breath ragged, and then face combat scenarios. He wanted them to understand what it felt like to fight when your body was screaming at you to run. This is closer to real combat than anything you do in standard training, he explained. In actual battle, you will be tired. You will be scared. You will want to give up. You must learn to fight through it. The fourth lesson was about adaptability. Doyen set up scenarios that changed constantly. He would have them start fighting one way, then suddenly change the rules. Weapons that worked one moment would fail the next. Terrain that was solid would become unstable. Allies would pretend to be injured. The Wraiths adapted to everything we threw at them, Doyen said. Every tactic we used, they learned and countered. So we had to stay one step ahead. We never did the same thing twice. We improvised constantly. We turned anything we could find into a weapon. He showed them how humans had used the Wraith ship's own systems against them, how they had vented atmosphere to clear corridors, how they had overloaded power cores to create explosions, how they had hacked into machine networks using methods that made no logical sense but worked anyway. Humans are good at making things up as we go, Doyen said with a slight smile. We are not as advanced as most races. Our technology is inferior. Our weapons are weaker, so we compensate by being creative. We think outside standard military doctrine. We try things that should not work, and sometimes they do. The fifth lesson was about sacrifice. This was the lesson Doyen seemed most reluctant to teach. There will be times, he said quietly, when victory requires someone to not come home. When completing the mission means certain death for whoever volunteers. The training hall was silent. Captain Sang-hoon knew he was going to die when he stayed on that mothership. Doyen continued. He knew the core breach required someone to manually trigger it, and that person would not survive. He ordered me to take the rest of the team and evacuate. I wanted to stay instead. He pulled rank and made me leave. Doyen's voice remained steady, but Hana could see the pain in his eyes. He saved us all by dying. And he was not the only one. 43 others made similar choices during that battle. They stayed behind so their comrades could complete objectives. They drew fire so others could advance. They held positions they knew they could not survive. This is the hardest part of being human, Doyen said. We are very good at sacrificing ourselves. Too good, perhaps, but sometimes it is necessary. Sometimes the mission matters more than any one life. He looked at each of them. I am not telling you to seek death. I am telling you to understand that there may come a time when your life is the price of victory. When that moment comes, you must be ready to pay it without hesitation. The room remained silent. This lesson required no practice, only understanding. On the 6th day, news arrived that changed everything. Hana was in the middle of a training session when alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Within minutes, the training hall was filled with officers and officials running to emergency posts. Empress Mirai's voice came over the communication system. All military personnel report to stations. All diplomatic guests are to remain in secure areas. This is not a drill. Doyen immediately went into a different mode. The teacher disappeared, replaced by the soldier. Stay here, he told the 4 warriors. I need to get to the human delegation. But Hana grabbed his arm. What is happening? Before he could answer, Jiho's personal communicator chimed. He listened and his face went pale. The frontier stations have detected wraith signals. Multiple contacts. They are back. The words hit like a physical blow. The wraiths were supposed to be gone, eliminated 15 years ago, but apparently, they had been wrong. More information came in over the next hour. A wraith fleet had appeared at the edge of known space. It was moving toward populated systems. The Galactic Council was calling for all military forces to respond. Hana found her mother in the command center. Empress Mirai stood before a massive display showing the wraith formation. It was huge, larger than the force that had attacked Karan Passage. How many ships? Hana asked. Thousands, Mirai said grimly. They have been building in dark space for 15 years. Now they are ready to finish what they started. The Empress turned to her assembled officers. Valthera will send a fleet. We will honor our obligations to the Council and our allies. I need volunteers for a rapid response force. This will be dangerous. Some of you will not return. The room erupted as every officer present volunteered immediately. Valthan warriors did not shy from danger. Hana stepped forward. Mother, I volunteer. My unit is ready. Mirai looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. You will command a strike team. Over the next few hours, the mission took shape. A combined fleet would engage the Wraith main force. Smaller strike teams would attempt to disable key vessels using boarding tactics. The Kelvor system looked beautiful from a distance. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun, their surfaces glittering with cities and agricultural domes. In 12 hours, none of it would matter. The Wraith fleet was coming, and everything in its path would be consumed. Hana stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Victory's Edge, watching the tactical display. The combined coalition fleet had assembled here, hundreds of ships from a dozen races. It looked impressive, but the Wraith formation approaching from deep space was 3 times larger than initial scans had predicted. They were waiting for us, Captain Jiwan said grimly. The gruff Valthan officer commanded the Victory's Edge, and his years of experience showed in his worried expression. They wanted us to gather in one place. Doyen stood nearby, studying the display with calm focus. It is a trap, he agreed, but we cannot leave. If we abandon Kelvor, the Wraiths will sweep through this entire sector. So we fight a battle we cannot win? Jiwan asked. We fight the battle in front of us, Doyen replied. Winning comes second to buying time for evacuation. Hana watched the exchange and marveled at how much had changed in 2 weeks. Doyen spoke with the same quiet authority he had used in training, and hardened officers like Jiwan listened without question. Respect was no longer about size or strength. It was about proven competence. The fleet split into formations. Capital ships would engage the Wraith main force in open space. Boarding teams would target key vessels to disrupt their coordination. Hana's team was assigned to one of the largest Wraith carriers, a massive construct that served as a mobile command center. Her team consisted of herself, Jiho, Kyung, and Taehyun, along with Doyeon and 2 other humans. Subin, a young intelligence officer who looked barely old enough to serve, and Minho, a Valthan weapons engineer who had volunteered to help disable Wraith systems. 7 people to infiltrate a ship that could hold thousands of machine soldiers. As they prepared in the deployment bay, Doyeon gathered them together. "Remember your training," he said. "Fast, efficient, unpredictable. We get in, we sabotage their command network. We get out. No heroics, no glory. Just the mission." "What if we cannot get out?" Kyung asked quietly. "Then we make sure the mission succeeds anyway," Doyeon replied. He did not sugarcoat it. They all knew the odds. The battle began with a wall of fire. The Wraith fleet opened up with weapons that turned space itself into a killing field. The coalition ships returned fire, and the void between became a storm of energy and destruction. Ships on both sides died in the opening salvos. Through the chaos, small assault craft launched from the coalition carriers. Hana's team rode in a stealth pod, racing toward the Wraith command carrier. The pod shook with near misses, and twice the pilot had to take evasive action that left them all fighting nausea. They cut through the Wraith hull and entered the ship. Immediately they knew something was wrong. There was no welcoming committee of Wraith soldiers. The corridors were empty. "They are learning," Doyeon said quietly. "They know we use boarding tactics. They have adapted." "So where are they?" Jiho asked, his weapon sweeping the empty hallway. "Waiting," Doyeon replied. "This is an ambush." They moved deeper into the ship, following Subin's scans toward the command nexus. The young intelligence officer was brilliant with technology, her fingers dancing over her datapad as she mapped the Wraith systems. Minho worked beside her, already preparing the devices that would overload the command network. The first attack came from above. Wraith soldiers dropped from concealed ceiling panels, a dozen of them at once. But Hana's team had been trained by Doyeon. They did not fight fair. Jiho threw a flashbang grenade that disrupted the Wraith's optical sensors. Taehyun fired at the ceiling supports, collapsing part of the corridor onto the machines. Hana used the moment of confusion to target weak points, disabling 3 Wraiths in rapid succession. Doyeon moved through them like a ghost, each shot precise, each movement economical. He wasted no motion, no ammunition. Within 30 seconds, all 12 Wraiths were down. "Keep moving," Doyeon ordered. They ran. The second attack came from walls that suddenly became doors. Wraith soldiers poured out from hidden compartments on all sides. This time there were too many to count. "Fall back to the junction," Doyeon shouted. They retreated to a narrower corridor where the Wraiths could only approach from 2 directions. It was a bottleneck, a defensive position. The Wraiths kept coming, but the team held. Kyung fought beside Hana, his weapon blazing. "They are not stopping," he yelled. "They do not need to stop," Doyeon called back. "They just need to delay us until we run out of ammunition." Minho suddenly spoke up. "There is another way to the command nexus, through the ventilation system. It will be tight, but we can make it." "Do it," Doyeon said. He and Jiho would cover the retreat while the others moved. But as the team began to fall back, a massive Wraith soldier, larger than the others, smashed through the wall. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. It grabbed Kyung before anyone could react. Hana watched in horror as her friend was lifted off his feet. The Wraith's claws pierced his armor. Kyung screamed, his weapon falling from his hands. Then Subin did something impossible. The young human officer ran forward, jumped onto the Wraith's back and jammed something into the machine's neck joint. It was a data spike, normally used for hacking systems. Blue electricity arced across the Wraith's frame. It convulsed, dropping Kyung. But in saving him, Subin put herself in reach of the Wraith's remaining functional arm. It swung, catching her across the chest. She flew backward, hitting the wall hard, her body crumpled. "No!" Doyeon was moving before anyone else could react. He reached Subin in seconds, but it was clear from his expression that it was too late. The young officer's eyes were already glazing over. Mission, she whispered. Complete. The mission. Then she was gone. Doyen gently closed her eyes. When he stood, his face was carved from stone. Move, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. She bought us time. Do not waste it. They got Kyung to his feet. He was wounded but mobile. They reached the ventilation access and began climbing. Behind them they could hear more wraiths coming. The ventilation system was cramped and dark. They crawled through ducts barely wide enough for a human, let alone Valthans. Minho led the way, his scanner showing the path to the command nexus. They were close now. They emerged in a circular chamber filled with glowing terminals and pulsing conduits. This was the heart of the Wraith ship, the nexus where all commands originated. Minho immediately began setting up his devices. I need 10 minutes, he said. You have 5, Doyun replied, taking position at the only entrance. They know we are here. Hana and the others set up a defensive perimeter. Tai-hyun was wounded, his left arm barely functional. Kyung could barely stand, leaning against a terminal. Jiho and Hana were at their limits, exhausted and low on ammunition. The wraiths came like a tide. They poured into the chamber in waves, each wave larger than the last. The team fought with everything they had. Hana used techniques Doyen had taught her, targeting joints and sensors, making every shot count. Jiho covered the flanks, his movements sharp despite his fatigue. Taehyun fought one-handed, refusing to fall. But there were too many. For every wraith they destroyed, 3 more took its place. Minho, Doyen shouted. How long? 3 minutes. They did not have 3 minutes. The wraiths were pushing them back, overwhelming their position. Hana felt desperation rising in her chest. They were going to fail. Subin had died for nothing. Then Minho was hit. A wraith shot got through their defense and struck him in the side. He collapsed over his equipment, blood spreading across the terminal. No, no, no. Minho gasped, trying to reach the activation switch. His fingers were inches away, but he had no strength left. Doyen saw it instantly. He made a decision. Fall back to the ventilation shaft, he ordered. Now! We cannot leave without... Hana began. Go! Doyen shouted, the first time she had ever heard him yell. I will finish it. Hana understood. Someone had to stay and manually activate the overload. Someone had to ensure the mission succeeded, and that someone was going to die doing it. No, she said firmly. I will stay. You can get them out. Doyen looked at her, and for a moment, something like pride flashed in his eyes. You would make that choice? You taught me to, Hana replied. Good, Doyen said. Now learn one more lesson. Sometimes the teacher has to stay so the student can live to teach others. Before Hana could protest, Doyen grabbed her and physically threw her toward the ventilation shaft. His strength, fueled by desperation, was enough to send her sprawling. Jiho caught her, pulling her back. Get her out of here, Doyen ordered. Then he turned back to the wraiths, placing himself between them and Minho's equipment. No, Hana screamed, fighting against Jiho's grip. Doyen, no. Doyen did not look back. He simply said, You asked why I did not tell you who I was. Because I am the guy who stays behind. Now go be the one who lives. Tell the story. Make it mean something. Jiho dragged Hana into the ventilation shaft. The last thing she saw was Doyen standing alone in that chamber, surrounded by dozens of wraith soldiers, calmly checking his weapon one last time. Then Taehyun sealed the shaft behind them. They crawled frantically through the ducts. Behind them they heard the sounds of fighting, heard weapons fire,